Hello, my name is Chaim Hertz. I'm the Human Resources Director for the City of Springfield, and it's my honor and privilege to present to the Budget Committee the proposed budget for the HR Department for fiscal year 2021. The Human Resources Department is staffed by 7 FTE, which includes my position. The functionality and the roles that the HR Department provides to the City of Springfield is both in support and business partner expertise for city employees as well as city leaders in the areas of employee and labor relations, of which we have 5 different collective bargaining agreements within our employee population, plus 1 population of non-represented employees. We administer the classification and compensation system for the city, once again with the 5 collective bargaining agreements in the non-rep group, the administration of citywide benefits, all recruitment functions, what we reference as talent acquisition, citywide training programs and activities, administration of city insurance programs, typically referenced as risk management, the support and administration of the various protective leaves, including ADA accommodations, support for volunteer activities, and last but not least is the administration of citywide payroll services. The Human Resources Department's budget and proposed budget is showing an increase of 6.5%. That's somewhat misleading in the way it looks. That 6.5% is made up of consolidation of some fundings that were previously in other departments that were moved into the Human Resources Department, as well as additional anticipated revenue expenditures out of reserve funds, which I'll talk more in some of the upcoming slides. The actual general fund impact is really less than 0.5%. Most of that is tied to either wage increases or internal facility charges connected to the wellness center clinic that we have on site here. I'm going to start my kind of substantive part of my presentation by talking about the city's self-funded medical programs. The city versus using a purchased product as a self-funded benefit plan. We implemented that benefit plan back in 2015. That plan has been remarkably successful for the city. We've been able to essentially hold fees flat for 7 years, even though rates have increased and we've had peaks and valleys in cost. But we've built such a healthy reserve fund that capped out in fiscal year 18 at nearly $6 million. We received direction from an actuary study that said that dollars needed to really get dropped down to somewhere around $2 to $3 million. So we've been intentionally trying to lower those reserve dollars, which has been very helpful for the city because we've been able to do things like benefit holidays where we don't have either internal charges to the city or to the employees. And we've been able to use those internal charge dollars that would have otherwise been put into the benefit reserve funds to help us with PERS side accounts to hopefully lower or mitigate some of the additional expenditures we have in the future as it relates to the PERS program. We did, however, see an increase in fiscal year 20 related to an upswing in medical insurance costs. Our net claims were up by 4.6%, and we also had hit our stop loss ratio, which is an unusual occurrence for this. As a result, we're taking a conservative approach with our budget proposal for the future and proposing potentially an additional expenditure for next year, hoping that doesn't occur, but it's wise to just do best guess projections on these. The funding and, of course, the dollars that would be allocated out of that, once again, would come from the reserve fund, which is really generated through internal charges and fees towards employees. The other fund that I want to talk about is the property and liability insurance fund. So there are 2 different insurances that we have through here. One of those is property insurances. This is both of these areas are areas where we're seeing an upswing in cost. Property insurance rates have continued to increase because there's been a growing, or in other words, an upswing in both global and U.S. property losses. Some of this is, or a lot of this is related to climate change. So we're having more severe weather events, floods, hurricanes, earthquakes. And the result of that is that rates across the country and across nationally have increased as a way to offset the losses that insurances are receiving. Not something we can specifically control, it's just the environment that we live in today. The other piece of this has to do with liability claims. We have a couple of very litigious services that the city provides to the community. That's primarily are all connected into either the law enforcement or the jail services that we've had. Regretfully, we've had some pretty high expensive lawsuits that have been directed towards the city for events that have occurred, which has required us to put higher reserve dollars out there, which is increasing our rates. And the net effect of that is that we've been told by our insurance provider to expect pretty significant increases over the next 2 or 3 years. We are actively working with our insurance provider as well as our police department to ensure that we've got the right protocols, policies, and procedures in place to hopefully minimize that in the future. But it is just a high risk service that the city provides. The next area is workers' compensation. This is similar to our benefit program where we have very healthy reserves, and we've been intentionally trying to lower those reserves. And you can see that between the FY19 through the proposed FY21 budget. We are trying to get those reserves down to just under $1 million. So we've been holding fees flat, which is one of the ways that we've been trying to just get the reserve dollars down to a more manageable amount. And on top of that, we just have historically been very successful in decreasing workplace injuries. And specifically, we've seen some great work out of our DPW operations group and their safety program that's been effective not only in preventing injuries, but also coming up with ways that people can work at a lower risk. Sprains and strains are kind of the more traditional type of workplace injuries that we see, you know, a fairly, not at a high rate, but is a pretty common one. It's an unpredictable one. And given really the work that some of our occupations do, when I think about the brave men and women in our police department and our fire department, I think they do everything they can to try to reduce the likelihood of them getting hurt, but their work comes with considerable risk. But as a whole, as an organization, we're doing quite well, and we're actually seeing, in some cases, lower rates because of just the effectiveness that the city has with managing workplace injuries. Accomplishments over the FY20 fiscal year. So some of the highlights that we had was just our ongoing progress with the administration, or excuse me, the development of our administrative regulations, policies and procedural documents. And so we've, over the last year, have rolled out the complete city leave policies. We've rolled out 3 vehicle use policies intended to obviously set some rules and protocols, but also lower risk and liability as it relates to the use of vehicles for city business. Additionally, the big one for us is that we just finalized and completed the rollout of a replacement for our online recruiting system. We had previously had an aged system. So we now replace that with NeoGov, which we believe will considerably enhance not only the ease of administration of that tool, but also the application experience. In addition, we did phase 1 implementation for both a background check vendor, that solution, and a risk management information system that we received budget dollars last year. So we're at phase 1 rollout of that. And then finally, we received for the 4th year in a row, the League of Oregon Cities Silver Star Award as it relates to workplace safety. As we look ahead, the next fiscal year, we got several key initiatives that we're going to work on. One of them is the compensation market study that we do as part of a collective bargaining agreement with SEIU. This is a comprehensive study that we do every 3 years. Unlike traditional collective bargaining agreements, they receive a wage increase once every 3 years. And so we're in that cycle where we will be completing the comp study with the proposal for rollout of a wage study not this coming July, but the following July. Job description redesign is an area that we've started already, but trying to do an update to our aged job descriptions that have not really been refreshed for about 10 years and has created considerable confusion around our class and comp system. And so we're working towards that. Also, the city needs to, or we need to as a department, as far an ease of administration, is to look at potential solutions for how we administer protective leaves. One of those is potentially thinking about a vendor solution. So we're planning to complete a feasibility study with the hopes of putting something in place or getting something in place that will allow us to not only maintain the existing practices we have, but also the paid sick leave that will take effect in 2022. We're also looking at other ways to manage just the ease of our benefits and administration of the work that we do. So transitioning from 3 voluntary deferred comp vendors to 1 is a key step in that direction. The full implementation of the background check vendor as well as the risk management system are the other 2. And then finally, we want to do what's called a PML, or a probable max loss study, to make sure that we've got the adequate insurance but not excessive insurance as it relates to physical assets that the city owns, and just making sure that we've got the right rules and dollars being spent in the right way. Long-term future considerations that we're working on, so kind of our strategic pillars, if you will. For us is 1 is just the ongoing maintenance of our insurance costs as it relates to benefits. It's a high ticket item, and making sure that we continue to manage that effectively is a key strategy. Recruitment and turnover, we keep creeping up. We've now about 8% total turnover. 3% of that is related to retirees, but just making sure we've got, we're on top of controlling the not only the recruitment activities, but also reducing turnover, so that not only does it ease labor costs within my department, but also ensuring that we meet productivity expectations within the department are key initiatives. And then kind of 3, 4, and 5 is just kind of staying on top of insurance cost controls with property and liability. I talked about that earlier, so I won't repeat that. Same thing with administrative and protected leaves. Another key part. And then lastly, technology is a key objective of ours, staying up with that. And I think certainly under the current COVID situations with a number of telecommute things that we had to put into place with to support the ongoing needs of the city, recognizes how critical technology is for us. So making sure that we've got the right solutions and the right policies in place to support those initiatives are all part of our long-term future considerations. So with that, I will conclude my presentation, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, everybody.